I used to think that I just had really bad luck with men. Turns out that instead it was more of a pattern and it had to do with my Mars sign. And it took me years to understand this. So, this is my glow up journey regarding my Mars sign. So, just to be quick about Mars, it's your drive, it's your fight, it's your desire, it's how you go after what you want. And when you line up your Mars against somebody else's Mars, it shows you the type of energy that's going to come of your relationship together. For reference, my Mars is in Scorpio. So let's start with my first relationship. That was Mars in Capricorn. I like to consider this the foundation. It was my first long term relationship, almost 10 years. And honestly, it wasn't a bad start. Capricorn and Scorpio are both pretty patient and both are pretty intense. And they're in it for the long haul. And this relationship taught me what steady felt like. It wasn't perfect by any means. He was emotionally guarded, but it set the bar for commitment. And looking back, this was learning what depth felt like for the first time. Then we evolved to X number two. This is long story, but the person I ended up marrying, and that was Mars and Gemini. So that squares my Scorpio Mars. And this is where things got pretty confusing. His energy as mental energy, I like to point that out because he was like slow like a turtle. But anyway, it was very fast. And when we would fight, it would be in completely two different languages. And that's when I started to realize that not every connection is supposed to work just because it's like intellectually stimulating, I guess. I don't know. But it evolved into my next relationship, which was another Mars and Scorpio. That was my wake up call. That was when things got dark. It was the same sign as me. And I want to be really clear that the same sign does not mean compatible. Sometimes it means you get handed a mirror, and the mirror shows you the worst version of yourself amplified. And this relationship was abusive and toxic, requires its own story time. But it did definitely force a lot of growth. It was one of those places where I had to survive because I understood what I needed because it was a mirror. And then the next relationship that evolved to was a Mars and Sagittarius. That's another square to my Mars. That was really toxic because I definitely was with, I'd say, a clinical narcissist for sure. I noticed that squares were the pattern for me. Like both toxic relationships were squares to my Mars. And that's not a coincidence. That is data. This was the last hard lesson before I finally understood what I was actually looking at in my chart. And I'm keeping this short and brief. So it's not a long story.